hopefully.
It says it's live. Let me just.
Yeah, let's just talk about shitwater while we're still alive.
You're right now.
Here with Michael Burns got a lot of shitwater.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, welcome to this Wisecrack Extra Edition. I am your host, Alec, joined here with Dr. Burninator himself, Michael Burns.
Hey everyone on the internet and who listens to this later.
Yeah, whoever's watching. So this is FYI, a thing we normally do for our patrons every month. We record about episodes we're working on or have worked on or that have come out to just give people a little bit of extra content. If you want to support us or get early access to podcasts like this or early releases of episodes, you can go to wisecrackplus.com to learn more. So go do that. But for now, we're talking about season 13 of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Yeah. And real quick too, as we get started, can people ask us questions as we do this?
Yeah, they can ask us questions. I'm actually trying to, here we go. I'm pulling it up right now. I can see the chat.
Cool. I just want
Jonathan says, hi, Michael and Alec. And I say, hi, Jonathan.
Oh, I don't get to see it. Just you do, I guess. That's fine. You're in charge anyways. Hey, Jonathan. Thank you for being here on a Thursday afternoon. Well, depending on where you live, it could be night or morning, but glad.
Yeah. All right. So I think the first things first, what is your favorite episode from the season?
Oh my God. Okay. So I think in terms of what I think the objectively best episode is in terms of TV being considered an art form, definitely Mac Finds His Pride.
The last episode. With the dance episode.
The dance episode, yes. I think the funniest episode is, it's the Me Too episode. Or about like the climate being hot and they go to a sexual harassment workshop. I think that episode, there's a few times where I busted open laughing because they really went for it.
Yeah, it's weird. I literally watched this season last week, and before I looked at the episode list, all I could remember is the first episode, the sexual harassment episode, the Wade Boggs episode, Ladies Edition, and Mac Finds His Pride, which are like, the other episodes are also great. Oh, and the NFL one, the Saw episode.
Yeah,
they're all great, but like those episodes are just so fucking good. So why is the sexual harassment one your favorite episode?
Second. Yeah.
That's how it'll like show you.
Oh, okay. So like that?
Yeah.
So when I talk, click that.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey everyone, Alex is gone now. You're just gonna talk to me. The sexual harassment one I thought was good because so it's typical of Always Sunny to dive into like hot areas, things that are tough to talk about because they are kind of serious. And I think by really leaning into it, they handled it in a really funny way. Frank's performance in that episode is incredible as he keeps walking in and out in a bathrobe on the phone with the lawyer. I love that Mac's immediate response to being in that sexual harassment meeting is how can they get enough points to win?
Yes.
And I think my favorite moment is probably when Mac and Dee aren't satisfied with the role playing of two of their fellow workshop members, so they insist on taking over. And Mac immediately lifts Dee up by her crotch. Everyone's horrified, and Dee's first response is like, "That was so cool."
Yeah, and the guy running it is like, she can press charges for that. You can't do that. Did you think? As soon as I saw the dance, I was like, wait, is this why Mac has been lifting people? Because it's like foreshadowing his dance?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. And supposedly like he had to get into that level of shape to do that. So, there's a few articles out there about the preparation he did for the dance. And it was like months and months and months of super rigorous work. And the woman who is in it with him is, I guess, like a world-class dancer. So they really went for it.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about the dance stuff later, but yeah, that was great. And then just the turn at the end where Dennis put it all on, and it's like, my shit is on lock. You people need to get your shit on lock, especially you, Charlie, and your creepy waitress stalker shit. It was great.
When Dennis shows the text messages that from these people. And they say, did they really send those? They really came from their phones. But I love that. Yeah, it was like Dennis still being Dennis System Dennis, but in like the Me Too era, which is so dark. But it's like, how does someone like Dennis keep it up in the contemporary world? It was just so good.
Yeah, I have to say, I think my favorite episode is the first one, and it's because of the way it frames everything else, and also it's just so fucking meta and perfect. Like,
My God, yes.
first of all, I mean, in one way, the episode opens like, we're new now. Mindy Kaling is like,
Yeah.
how nice of you to accept a brown skinned girl like me. And then they've got like a very well thought out plan that's kind of vague about making Patty's great again, possibly fucking over another bar, but that's just like the backdrop. But then like the back to normal is as soon as the sex doll enters, which is how the show normally runs. And they just like keep having callbacks. So there is the duster comes back.
I was so happy to see the duster return.
Yeah. Frank shoots a gun for no reason.
Yes. I mean, like, for whatever reason, I don't like gun stuff anymore, but Frank Reynolds always needs to be pointing a gun and shooting.
And what was the episode? There's also the episode where they open the stall and he's got a gun on the toilet.
Yeah, I forget the exact line. I wrote it down somewhere. It's so good.
And there's Mac's sudden weight change, except this time he's losing it instead of gaining it.
Yeah.
They end up back at a strip club, and Max says something to the extent of like, we can't just keep doing the same thing. It's different times now.
No, it's good. And I like that moment too. Because, I think the show occasionally goes meta. I don't think they overdo it, but I love little moments like that, like the wink to the audience. It's like, yes, we are in our 13th season. We're already recycling some things right now. We're completely aware of that, and wait and see what we do with this.
Right. And almost when he asks why they keep doing the same things, it's like the ethos of the season, which is why if there's a reason, I just think watching the rest of the season makes this episode so much better. And then the last thing I have on my list, and maybe I'm missing anything if any of the commenters want to pitch in, but the waitress sleeps with Dennis, of course, which is a callback to, I didn't realize it was this early, but season 1, Charlie has cancer.
Yeah. And I think if I have this correctly, so they have sex at that time. And I think there's a few other points in the middle seasons where like they flirt with that, or Dennis like uses the waitress's attraction to him to manipulate her in various ways. But yeah, I love when like Charlie comes back in, she's drunk off their liberal tears wine.
Mm-hmm.
Her response is just like, I think she says, wait, can we swear on this?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
she's like, oh, I fucked it.
Yeah, she's like, I fucked it. It's just so dark that her response was getting drunk and banging the doll. And the doll was insane looking. It was so uncanny and creepy, and just like the mouth agape. Oh my God.
I think that's just what sex dolls look like, though. I heard from a friend.
No, I know a little bit about sex dolls because I 3 years ago was teaching an ethics and technology class, and a group of students did a presentation on sex dolls where they showed like videos of sex dolls in action. The student told me after the fact their sort of like goal was to try to get me to crack when they were giving the presentation.
Did you crack?
A couple of times I had to do the like, but it was so absurd. I was, oh my God. But yeah, so that did look I think they got a nice sex doll for the show.
Yeah, this sorry, your presentation story. I was in the class was called Interspecies Politics.
Wow.
And a very like serious, great professor, Rafi Uat. And when we started presenting our final papers, do you know who Mr. Hands is?
Mr. Hands?
It was this internet meme. Really, it was a video of a guy who had a horse fuck him and died from like internal.
Yeah, I forgot that's what that was, but I know about the guy that got fucked by the horse and died. Yeah.
Yeah, my friend's paper was on Mr. Hands and a documentary made about the town. And not once did the professor crack. Anyway, now that I've told that very necessary anecdote, so the last thing I think that's sort of a repetition is that the waitress is back to drinking.
Yep.
So it's like there's all this growth of characters, maybe in last season, maybe in this episode itself, and then it just immediately goes back to the way things were, culminated by Dennis showing up. And one of the last moments of that episode is Dennis just calls Dee a bird, and they all start cracking up, and it's like back to the good old days.
Yeah, and it's especially fun because you have the Cindy character played by Mindy Kaling, who's like makes fun of them for being basic and boring. In a certain sense, like being correct, because at this point they're all in their early 40s and they're still living life like this. And she
Yeah.
calls them out, but they don't care because he made a bird joke. Of course, right after Frank waves a gun at him as well. I think he fires it at that point. All came to life.
Another, it's like extra meta because she says, you're played out or you're basic, but then the reaction to it, as I have it written down, is she says your ideas are played out, you're basic, and then I think it's Max says you already said that, kind of repeating jokes there.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good.
Yeah, so that's why it's my favorite episode. But we're talking about how the episode frames the rest of the season. It seems like this joke of make patties great again is all over the rest of the season. And maybe I'm forgetting examples here, so please fill me in. But Dennis has to get his Range Rover back. So he turns into this new, better, friendlier person who plays fantasy football. And then he gets his Range Rover and he's back to being a sociopath.
Yep.
The sexual harassment seminar, it's sort of like, what kind of days are we living in? Oh, you can't act like this anymore. Just kidding. Dennis is still a psychopath. Really, it's just reaffirming that Dennis is a psychopath.
Yeah. Same episode where Dennis gets the Range Rover back. Dee sleeps with a teenager to get society women that she thinks has slighted her, which I think is just like a classic Dee move.
Has she hasn't slept with a teenager before, has she?
Oh, she tries to in, was it season 1, episode 3, where they let high schoolers in the bar and then Dee goes to prom with the cool guy.
Yes.
I think she always does in that episode. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, classic. And then there's the Super Bowl episode where they just bring back the ensemble of characters. You've got Bill Ponderosa, Rickety Cricket, Uncle
male model.
Yeah, what's the male model from?
So he is from the episode where Frank does like a Mr. Patty's contest of like male models to win, and it's sort of to shame Dennis in a certain way, and Rex is like his guy that he oils up, and I think they do some like, wow, I forget exactly, but yeah, it's like it was like a Mr. Patty's or Mr. Philadelphia contest or whatever. But now, of course, he's lost his body because he's selling he's a part of a Barry's pyramid scheme.
Oh yeah, and they're just full of sugar.
Yeah.
I saw a woman in my building just like with a giant box of some inexplicable product that seemed to be like health related, and I was like, is she in a pyramid scheme?
Probably.
Is that polite to ask in an elevator? Hey, what's your pyramid scheme?
No, I don't think you can do it, because then if the elevator breaks, she has nothing to do but try to sell stuff to you. But I think if we can say anything at all, I like the whole season, but the episodes you're talking about, those were like the weakest ones to me, the 2 Super Bowl episodes. They're both funny, but it's interesting that for me, at least, the episode that I probably enjoyed least was probably the second Super Bowl one where they're all there together, which was the one that was just bringing back all of these old favorites. I liked it, didn't love it.
Yeah, though I don't like the first Super Bowl episode because it's just disgusting. It makes me uncomfortable. Also, a quick shout out to Gabriel De La Rosa Coles. Hello. He says hello.
Hey.
So yeah, those episodes were fine. I did like the kidney stone bit.
Oh, that was really good. Yeah, shit.
Yeah. Okay. So is this your favorite Always Sunny in Philadelphia, or do you even have a favorite?
Like season, you mean?
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh, God. It's probably not my favorite season. Off the top of my head, I'm trying to think what was. I mean, I think that like the last 5 seasons have on and off been really good. And I think there's been, I don't know, I think all the seasons since they've been aware of having to, how do I phrase this? I guess like I think they've done a really good job of updating the show for the contemporary world, because the first few seasons you do have a lot of jokes now that read as like pretty creepy, a lot of homophobic stuff, certain things that even border on kind of like racist. And I think that while I like the whole series, the past few seasons have done such a good job of like reckoning with all of that while still holding on to like the magical irreverent core of the show.
Right.
I don't know if I have a favorite. Do you have a favorite season?
I remember a lot of episodes, but I don't know if I necessarily remember the seasons themselves. But to me, this season's cohesive in a way that like I really like that fact of it.
Yeah, I know. I think you're right there. Because I think when I think about Always Sunny, I think about individual episodes. I imagine going forward, I'll always think of season 13 as something cohesive, like how you put
Yeah,
it.
yeah. All right. So we talked about this a little bit, but oh, sorry. One more thing. This is a question from our patron, the CC Collective, which I think stands for Communist Cephalopod. It's a whole weird thing that happens on our Discord, which you can be a part of if you go to Wisecrack Plus. Anyway, I'm done with that. CC Collective wants to know who your favorite character is.
Ooh, mine personally, this is so hard, but I'm going to say Charlie. I think that Charlie being in a certain sense, Charlie's the least changed character. He's the most consistent because so much of what makes his character so absurd comes from the fact that he's kind of insane, very low IQ'd. And I think that like if I had to say favorite episodes ever, any episode where Charlie is singing songs.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
and I think,
yeah. All the musical episodes are so fucking good, and also, God, what's the episode where he just starts screaming "fuck you" while playing piano?
oh, it's the one where they are trying to win some like Philly bar contest. So they're like classing themselves up, and there's all these people there from like whatever it is, like the Philadelphia Bar Judge Committee, and he eventually sings like "Go fuck yourselves" and just keeps
Yeah,
singing it at them. Yeah, so
it's it's classy.
who's your favorite character?
I also think it's Charlie, and I was going to say that he's the only one who's not a monster. I don't think Mac is a monster in the season, but like Mac is a monster. More specifically, Dennis is the most one of an asshole, and Dee's also really fucked up. But he's like so dumb that you can't really. He's just like dumb and very like earnest and kind of wholesome in a weird way. Even like the creepy shit he does, which they bring back in the sexual harassment episode. I'm kind of like, he's just so dumb. Like, yeah, he shouldn't do that, but he's dumb.
Yeah, and you think about like his stuff. So you have, Dennis is obviously a sociopath, and who like his shit with women is insane. Speaking of the escape room episode, Dee's pretty manipulative towards men. Mac early on especially has a really messed up view towards women as he's working out his own sexuality. But Charlie, like, it's creepy, but he like loved the waitress, so it wasn't like some creepy sexual conquest. He,
Yeah.
wrote an entire musical so that he could propose to her at the end, which is insane, but comes from some sort of weird Charlie Kelly place of earnestness.
Yeah, which the writing a piece of music, God, that happened in real life with a real artist. It's the guy Berlioz, who composed Symphony Fantastique,
Uh-huh.
famous composition. He wrote that for an actress he was like in love with, who I don't even think she knew she was in love with it. Then she heard it, and then they got married, and then they got divorced like a year later or something like that. So it's functionally It's Always Sunny, but in history.
Yeah, I'm sure it's basically the same thing.
Um, yeah. This is just Joseph Getzy. Alec, you do look like a former pizza guy struggling through college, not trying to show that you're smarter than everyone else. Also, thank you for finally doing sunny stuff. Well, you're welcome for always doing sunny stuff. I really don't know where this pizza thing comes from, but I'm gonna roll with it.
I mean, if he's saying that you look like someone who delivered one of the most perfect foods available in an honest way to support yourself as you sought out education and enlightenment, then I think it's nothing but a compliment.
Well, the original joke is someone wrote into is either I think it was the Squanch, and I was they're like I think Alec, who I haven't seen, looks like a guy who works at a pizza place, but is low key smarter than everyone. He's just working there to get his college degree. So yeah,
Not
moving on.
wrong.
I mean, I did work in a Mexican restaurant while getting a college degree.
There you go.
Yeah, I'd make some dank tableside guacamole.
Okay.
The Axe Clinic says Always Sunny is the Seinfeld of the current era, just assholes living in spite of themselves. I 100% agree with that sentiment.
Very true. I think they're, in a certain sense, the two sides of the same coin, or a continuation of a very weird coin. And luckily for the person who made that comment, we got to see them come together in this season, which is cool.
Yeah. Also, Joseph Getzi is informing me he did in fact write that. He was the one who wrote that email that I'm now alluding to.
Oh, no.
So nice to see you, Joseph. Thank you for tuning in. All right. So I want to talk about. So we've got an Always Sunny episode coming out, which is why we're even doing this for anyone who came out. I think it comes out in 1 or 2 weeks, but stay tuned. It's awesome. One of the things we talk about is repetition, and we get into some very weird, dense philosophy by a guy named Gilles Deleuze, whatever. I'm never going to get that right. And to summarize, this season about Always Sunny is all about repetition, but not the way of repetition as we normally think about that. Do you want to explain that a little bit?
Sure. I think so normally when we think about repetition, we think about repeating something in the exact same way. So if you're like doing piano lessons and you play your scales and you're like weirdly aggressive French piano teacher says again, and you play your scales again, it's meant to sound exactly the same. Or if you're cooking a recipe or whatever, you're trying to literally replicate or repeat the recipe. But a bunch of philosophers, and I would say starting, maybe there's better examples, but the first two that come to mind as being really important here are Soren Kierkegaard and Friedrich Nietzsche, want to think about repetition in different ways, and in particular, the ways in which repetition can become a thing that produces like difference or creative acts. So one of the first people that gets into this is Soren Kierkegaard, who basically, on one hand, thinks that whenever we try to literally repeat something, it's just like a shitty version of what once was. Like all the novelty is kind of sucked out of it. On the flip side, he thinks that real repetition is when we like take an idea and we repeat it ourselves in the way that only like we can. So kind of like saying, like, if you had like a recipe, I'm probably never going to cook something the same way some famous chef could, but maybe by using some of my flair and style, I'm injecting something new and different into that. Go ahead.
To me, and I almost put this in the script, but then we cut it. But anyway, it's like you make your own version of the AM Crunch Wrap, and it's not necessarily a poor imitation in this way that like Kierkegaard might say, but it is full of your own creativity, you could say.
That's great. Well, I'll give you a real example of that. A Jewish restaurant in LA called Friedman's did a special last week where they were making their own pastrami stuffed crunch wraps.
Oh,
They were delivering, and I got one delivered one night. It was the most expensive crunch wrap I've ever gotten delivered. It was so good and such a cool mashup. But no, yeah, that's a great example. Your one, not mine. But
yours
yes,
is good.
Yeah. Well, then we talk about Gilles Deleuze a little bit. So Deleuze is a 20th century French philosopher. Really hard dude to read.
I read an entire one of his books, and this was after I've read a lot of books about him, articles about him. I've like talked about his philosophy to like other people a lot, and then I actually went to the source material. And the only ththing that I remember from this book called Anti-Oedipus is that Judge Schreiber has a solar anus. I do not know what that means. Do I want to know what that means?
I don't think so. I did grad school in what you could call like a Deleuzian department, so I was around it a lot. I don't know if there's anyone who I've ever like started reading their books and then stopped and picked them up again 2 years later as much as him. But his first big book and first original work of philosophy was a book called Difference and Repetition. And while I will no way claim to understand the whole of that book, early on he basically tells us that he's pulling from, I guess, starting with Hume, but then going through Kierkegaard and Nietzsche and trying to think about repetition in new ways. And he draws a distinction basically between the types of repetition that are scientific, formulaic, follow laws. So for example, like baking would be that type of repetition. He calls it generality. But whenever we bake, like there's not a lot of flair and style. You measure things exactly. It's a scientific art. You want your temperature exact, all that sort of stuff. He then talks about sort of real repetition as being when we repeat something but there's sort of room and space for creative difference to emerge, like a space from the original thing. So if we're going to stick with cooking and food, because why not? If baking is that literal type of repetition, maybe just like cooking a normal dish allows you to creatively repeat something and inject something new into it. So one of the things he's getting at there is that repetition itself is the source of novelty or creativity. And he even mentions that good humor and irony emerge from that type of repetition. When we do something that's almost the same, but just different enough to give us kind of a new take or perspective on it.
And your point in the script is that most sitcom, and we've talked about Always Sunny as an anti-sitcom, but your traditional sitcom, it seems like you're very familiar with How I Met Your Mother. When they get this long into the run, they just start doing the same shit over and over again in that kind of generality repetition. Whereas Always Sunny goes this kind of repetition that's repetition for the sake of creativity or repetition laden with creativity. In that, like, we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to understand why it's different and also kind of subvert the original thing itself.
Yeah, and I think when we think about sitcoms, it's that difference between there's certain shows that we watch again and again, not to be surprised, but just to, it's like comfort food, you know? When one does go to like Taco Bell or something like that, we're not going to be like, "Ooh, what is the chef making today?" We go because we know what it's going to be and it's not surprising. And I do think shows like whether it be Friends or How I Met Your Mother or Big Bang Theory or whatever are kind of like that. You know what you're getting into. They don't try to reinvent the wheel, and they sort of have a few plays they keep running. Whereas I think It's Always Sunny, and especially this past season, there's some genuinely surprising moments. And by repeating and exploring past tropes and scenarios, they find new things there. So they're able to discover things, at least as an audience member, I found genuinely surprising and exciting.
We actually have a great question from Cola on YouTube. Does creative repetition can that be understood as interpretation, or are there differences between these terms? Creative repetition and interpretation. What's the
Yeah,
difference?
that's a super cool question, Cola. I mean, I think as Deleuze understands it, it's not. It's almost that like even in trying to repeat, I create. So it's not like what were the two terms he gave?
Creative repetition. If please correct me if I'm wrong because you have the PhD, but
I don't know.
Sometimes the creativeness of the difference that comes with repetition is like almost unavoidable. And the example that I've heard a lot, if it's appropriate, is you repeat the same word over and over again, it slowly loses its meaning. You're literally saying the same word, but the context of which it exists slowly starts to evaporate because with repetition comes difference.
Yeah, and I think that's a totally good example. I think like even just the creative process in general, with like comedy stuff, for example, sometimes most people who get good start off by just literally copying someone else, or even like a lot of writers, and novelists and stuff like that, filmmakers. Most of the best people are just literally trying to copy the things that inspired them. But in trying to do that, even if they're not consciously aware of it, you bring yourself, your perspective, your experience to bear on that repetition. So that's why you end up getting things that have that sort of like lineage, but like are their own thing. Kendrick Lamar like loves Tupac and tried to mimic certain stylistic things there, but in doing that ends up finding something, wholly his own or whatever it might be. So, yeah.
And I think interpretation seems like a much more deliberate process. I guess some repetition, creativity can be intentional, but interpretation to me is I'm going to look at a thing and intentionally try to pick it apart to like see what it says to me. And probably that's a part of creative repetition sometimes, to interpret, whether it's the lyrics of Tupac or previous seasons of It's Always Sunny.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, so in context of Always Sunny, they are putting the repetition, which is normally kind of hackneyed, into the service, and also like making fun of it at the same time, which I think could get us to one of my favorite episodes of the season is the Wade Boggs episode. I don't remember the full name, but it's called, do you remember?
The Gang Beats Boggs Ladies Reboot.
That sounds right.
I think that's
I didn't even like that original episode, but I love the reboot.
Yeah.
Because like again, it's asking questions like specifically about reboots in general, but also uh like the sort of cynical profiteering off of it, but also you could sort of zoom out a little bit more in general. Like there's an exchange I love where sorry, I'm just trying to find it. Artemis says to Dee's plan, she's like, "Oh, but it's the same idea, but slightly different, so it's a new idea." And Artemis says, "If it's all with women, then it should be better." And Dee says, "Why can't we just do the same thing?" And then Artemis replies, "Because if we do the same thing, why are we doing it all?" Which I think, in whatever context, is so true of literally everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I think they ask, and I think you point this out well too. There's so many things going on in that episode. Like they're critiquing themselves, they're critiquing the form that they participate in, like, you know, half-hour sitcoms. They're critiquing the entertainment industry in general for doing that. And then I think, of course, there's the, and I say this without wanting to wade into any weird territory, but they also are critiquing the ideas of like taking a thing that a bunch of dudes did and having women do it as well. And just to be 100% clear, if anyone's watching this, I'm in no way hearkening back to the crazy shit people said about the Ghostbusters reboot. I thought it was very fun. But it was interesting too that episode came out not too long. I imagine they would have been writing it when they did the Ocean's 8 sort of reboot thing.
Yeah.
Like the cinematic version of The Gang Beats Boggs in a certain respect.
Yeah, and also just like ask questions of, you know, like if you want to celebrate female comedians, stuff like that, like great. But Artemis is almost asking the question of like, well, why can't, like, we should be doing we shouldn't be impersonating like men. We should be doing our own thing, which I think is a sentiment that literally everyone should maybe agree with.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like that kind of idea. Why do we need the blueprint left for us by that group of alcoholic sociopaths? Why can't we just do something cool like for ourselves, which I thought was interesting. Of course, that's all made better by the fact that eventually we realized that Artemis is just running scams on the flight, and eventually it gets everyone high as shit on ayahuasca.
Yeah, which is also great because, yeah, you got to push your body to the limit. Body humor, it's great.
Yeah. And oh God.
I also just love her thing about like body humor, like it's edgy because we're women and, you know, whatever. And I'm just reminded of a conversation that I had with someone. I don't know why it came up, but it was essentially like, Alec, when you and I fart, it's not funny. When women do it, it's hilarious. And he was pointing to Two Dope Queens, which is a great comedy podcast if anyone is interested. Yeah. And it's just like Jessica Williams and Phoebe Robinson constantly talking about them shitting, them farting, like all these things. But yeah, the social context is interesting.
Yeah, that's very true. Because I get in trouble if I fart in my house.
Okay.
My partner, but then sometimes she farts, and then I get mad, and I say, if it was turned around, and she's like, it's different. Sorry for talking. She's not watching this, so it's fine.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, speaking of, we talked before about repeating characters and stuff. I do think they managed to bring back fan favorite Gail the Snail in a very nice way.
Oh yeah.
During the ladies reboot of Gang Beats Boggs.
She's the antagonist the gang needs.
Yeah. I kind of like forgot that she existed in that universe, so it was great to have her come back. One of the most horrifying things that's ever happened in that show is, you know, Charlie and I think Dee throwing salt on Gail the Snail.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah, that's really good. Also, I just want to talk briefly about, so this Wade Boggs thing is apparently true, and I did not know that.
I honestly didn't.
Do you know about this?
No, so he really did that?
So there were these rumors, and then he was on a sports show, and he, like Sports Center or something like that. And like, is it true? Did you drink 60 whatever beers on a cross country flight? And he's like, don't believe everything you hear. You know, there's an element in truth, but you know, and I think he alludes to the fact that the number is wrong, and like, oh shit, what's the real numbers? And then he says, but let's just say I had a few Miller Lights. And then I think he told Charlie Day because he cameoed on that episode. He's like, the real number is 107. But then, because maybe he's just fucking with Charlie Day. One of his teammates was like, "Oh no, it's this was not abnormal. Like, he had this routine that would start like waiting for the car or the limo that would take them to the airport onto the tarmac. If there was a layover, it would like continue in the layover airport. So like regularly in flights, starting with waiting for the car, he would drink 50 or 60 beers. So he's like, of course that was a real thing then.
I mean, I guess to be fair, if a Miller Lite is the example, I would say, and no one listening or watching should ever try to do this. If you're gonna drink a lot of a beer, that one's you can drink a lot of it. It's that what's that old adage people would say, like drinking light beers like having sex in a canoe because you're fucking near water.
Oh yeah. That's
Yeah.
that's a great one.
And anyway, was a part of it as well that he also like ate a chicken or something? Like ate a full roast chicken while
Oh yeah, before his games, he would eat either fried chicken or a whole roast chicken, something like that.
Wow. It's so crazy. All the things that seem so cool when we tell them as stories now that would be, I mean, I guess to get back in like repetition. So in the 70s or 80s, whenever Boggs did that, it's like a cool thing. Now, if a professional athlete drank 60 beers on a flight, it would be like a news story. That person would have to go to rehab, give a public statement, be out of the league. Like it would just be a huge thing. If you repeated that in a different context.
Yeah, there was a line where I think it's D says something to the effect of because the waitress is like, why don't we match the record of, and then names some female actresses. And then D says, because that would be sad. Like drunk women, it's just sad alcoholism. And I wonder if the joke was that this is also sad alcoholism, but for whatever reason, we don't.
No, I think you're totally right. It definitely is because that's another thing culturally. Like a white athlete guy getting shithoused is like this cool, funny thing. But yeah, if it was like, oh, did you hear that? Well, who was I just thinking of?
Kesha.
Oh, yeah. Oh no, that's dark. Yeah, like what if you heard that Kesha woke up in the morning with a bottle of Jack? I think that's the lyric from the song. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, sorry, I was just looking at the Boggs quote. Moving on from Boggs, this is kind of a weird question. So the clip episode's also great, where they start remembering things and get stuck in people's memories, like it's Inception, spin a top, and then it cuts away. But a second Charlie peeks through the window like it's not real. And in Charlie's fantasy, he has a child with a waitress. In the very next episode, the Super Bowl episode, the waitress is mentioning him starting a family with him. Yeah. And I'm wondering, is that episode like, is the joke that episode is not real?
I don't think so. Wait, because this is what I'm forgetting. Wasn't there something in the last season where they do try to have kids or something like that happens where the waitress finally gives in because she does want to have a child? I think that's a thing that like has come up.
I thought it was just that she gives into the relationship.
Yeah, maybe it was a nod to that. But I don't think we're meant to be in that different reality then, because that whole episode starts off from the Super Bowl trip where Cricket becomes Green Man to sneak on. I don't know. I mean, here's what I'd say though about that clip show episode is that's one of the ones that I think has some of the most interesting ideas, but I think it crams 3 or 4 interesting ideas into 21 minutes and not even into 21 minutes into like 10 minutes because the first 11 kind of are a clip show in a way that I don't want to say it's unsatisfying, but they just didn't really have enough time to cash it out because you sort of have the meta critique of clip shows. You have the Inception like element going on. You have the idea that some of these memories can simply just be that people remember things differently based on their own perspective, all of which I think are really interesting ideas. But I don't think we get them all really cashed out.
Yeah. Kung Fu Corey saying Charlie and the waitress have sex when Dennis tries to get rid of his baby mother from North Dakota. But that doesn't mean that they're trying to start a family.
God, I think I remember her saying that she wanted to, but maybe I am wrong. I often am.
And also they broke up because she slept with the dentist doll.
Did that imply a breakup? Or, I
I
mean,
don't know. She's back on the sauce.
well, then
Charlie's like, you cheated on me.
the real question is cheating with a sex doll cheating? And I think that's the moral quandary that the whole show wants us to think about, is that the advent of new technologies that enable sexual activity between humans and non-human entities, where does fidelity fall in all of that?
That's a great question. And I want everyone to write in about it.
Everyone write in about that. At least 1,000 words giving your analysis.
And then Burns will present it to his girlfriend in a completely disinterested way. That'd
be a funny thing to do, to like order. I always think this is why I know I'll never have millions of dollars, because I would not use it well, because I would do things like buy a sex doll and hide it in my house just to like terrify my girlfriend and creep her out.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have sex with it though.
You didn't have sex with it, bro.
Although this is a random reference, nothing to do with this. Is anyone in the live chat, or are you out? Have you ever seen the movie Lars and the Real Girl?
No idea what that is.
It's a weird Ryan Gosling movie from like 10 years ago, where he's this kind of like creepy loner Midwestern guy that falls in love with an early version of a sex doll.
Oh, so it's like Her.
It's like Her, but like more old school. It's like a brick and mortar Her rather than a digital Her. That's all. No one should watch it, but so what do you think? What did you think about the use of Dennis in this season? The way that he kind of pops in and out usually with not much explanation. Like, how do you think they handle that? And of course, this is against the backdrop of a world in which I think most of us thought he was out this season.
Yeah, I just took it as the show, especially in the first episode, is pretty upfront about its formula, which is there's a plan, and the plan gets insanely derailed for absolutely no reason. And Dennis is just kind of an agent of that, right? Yeah, but I didn't really think of him as popping in and out per se.
Well, because I mean, if we think about the episodes he's not in, so he's not in Gang Beats Boggs at all. He's not in either of the Super Bowl episodes. Is there any? So I think those are at least 3 he's just literally not in.
Because the Super Bowl episodes he's in North Dakota still.
Oh, that's how they did it, because they said it in the past before. Yeah, I forgot that this season isn't linear.
Yeah, and then the stewardess, the slave, if you will, says like, "Oh, I waited on you guys in Minnesota." I was like, "What did I miss?"
You're totally right.
All right, I want to talk about Max Dance because it was great, but I don't fully understand. I also want to talk about Max weight loss real quick.
Yeah.
I guess on a podcast called Armchair Expert, which is hosted by Dax Shepard. First of all, he talks about how he gained weight, which is amazing. He tried to consult a nutritionist on how to gain weight healthily, and the nutritionist was like, first of all, you can't really do that, but you could load up on chicken breast, rice, and vegetables. Yeah. And he's like, wasn't working. So then they're like, fine, you can eat Big Macs. Then that wasn't working. And then he would like he read a thing that certain food would be digested really slowly. So he'd put that in his stomach before he went to bed and then like eat a bunch of shit on top of it. And that's how he gained 60 pounds. Then for weight loss on Instagram, he posted. And so I don't think he lost the weight for the ballet or it was involved in that. I think he just lost it for a joke, as he does. Insane method actor. Oh, sorry. But real quick on the weight gain. He asked his doctors like, well, how's Christian Bale do it? Like, I want to talk to his doctor. And the doctor was like, oh, I know his doctor. That is not healthy. Yeah. So anyway, about his weight loss, he posts on Instagram, look, it's not that hard. All you need to do is lift weights 6 days a week, stop drinking alcohol, don't eat anything after 7 p.m., don't eat any carbs or sugar at all. In fact, just don't eat anything you like. get the personal trainer from Magic Mike, sleep 9 hours a night, run 3 miles a day, and have a studio pay for the whole thing over a 6 to 7 month span. I don't know why everyone's not doing this. It's a super realistic lifestyle and an appropriate body image to compare oneself to. Hashtag Hollywood.
So good.
Yeah.
I really no, but it's like it's both super hilarious that he commits to these bits for no real reason, and it's super cool that he makes that real. Because I don't know, sometimes I look at that and I think like, man, why aren't I as healthy as some of these hunks on TV? But like, it's a full-time job.
I literally had the thought earlier in this week that I was like, trying to get in shape. Man, I'm fucking almost 30. Like, can people past 30 even get in shape after they're as far gone as I am? And I saw him and it was like, actually, not that I mistakenly believe I can look like that, but I was like, he's like 40 and like he did that. So like I can maybe like get slightly in shape.
No,
but yeah.
it's doable. I think the problem is the older that one gets, it's like twice as much effort for the same result.
Right.
You know, like I think that I had periods. I'm older than you. I know, Alec. Everyone probably thinks I'm the cool teen that hangs around Wisecrack. Perspective. But yeah, you can still do it. It's just harder, and that's what's annoying about it. You know, when you're a young pitcher for the Phillies, you can drink 60 beers and eat a chicken and still be an athlete, and then you retire and get a little bit older, and it's hard.
Yeah.
Oh man. Wait. So talking about the Mac Dance episode, I can already tell that you were slightly less moved.
No, I liked it.
You're allowed to not like it.
No, that's not what it is. So I've been to like a couple of ballets and dances before, and my general impression is like, I like it, I don't get it. Which is to say, like, I know there is something interpretive to be done here. Like, I could be interpreting their dances somehow, maybe in like a way that we interpret movies. I just don't know how to do it. So when I see Max dance, I was like, I mean, I liked it, but I feel like a little bit of a basic bitch here. And I don't know on what grounds to like measure it necessarily, or even how to interpret it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, so I think the interesting thing is the contrast between Mac's inability to articulate what he's feeling. Because like 3 different times in the episode, he's like, I feel this thing inside. Like there's like this light and there's God and God's like a hot chick, but there's like a storm, and, you know, and Frank is like, what the fuck are you talking about? But like that kind of, I feel like the dance gets at that sort of tension because it starts with like the first movement of it is pretty hyper masculine. A lot of the moves are pretty aggressive with him getting very close to this woman, pushing her away, throwing her around. There's that moment of sort of collapse that coincides with Mac's dad getting up and leaving that then turns to something that seems way more vulnerable. And of course, yeah. And then you have Mac actually like breaking down and crying and the woman holding him. But I just like, it's one of those things where I didn't watch that episode until a week or two after it aired. And I just saw a lot of early takes online that led me to not read anything about it. And I was just like going in relatively blind. This is an episode that's just like starts with Frank making jokes about the super viruses eating the shit out of Mac's insides and ends with like, I'm just going to admit this, everyone on the chat thing. I like legitimately teared up at the end. It told me that It's Always Sunny, especially an episode of It's Always Sunny dealing with Mac's sexuality, which has been the huge joke, would like make me tear up. And in that moment too, where I think two things that stood out to me as well. One being Frank, Danny DeVito, having this moment where he looks genuinely in awe and kind of says like, I get it, after the whole episode telling Mac like, listen, I don't get it. I don't get the whole gay thing. I want to help you out, but I don't get it. And the fact that they didn't pull the rug out at all. They ended this season in a moment that is not, the last 5 minutes aren't funny. It's a really intense moment in which too Mac gets rejected by his father for coming out as gay.
Yeah. I will say though, the way that it is kind of funny is just Frank plugging garbage in his nose as a metaphor for Max, Max like coming to terms with himself.
Oh, and it's a funny episode, like early on when Frank's like, yeah, let one of these guys slap you around a little bit.
No, but not only that, like you watch it and you get teared up and you're like, oh yeah, he had to let it all out. he had to drain it like Frank's nose blood. Like there's still a way to like finish that episode and then like recontextualize it in your head and be like, oh yeah, like it's sincere, but it's still in my mind like trolling a little bit, if that makes sense. It might be, and I'm probably misusing this term, meta modern.
Oh yeah. So would you then, and let me give the caveat here. I have not watched the most recent season of South Park, but from what I understand, there's an episode where they kind of have like an hour bad for making fun of climate change with Man Bear.
Mhm. Yeah, I've seen that.
Do you think there's any relationship between the way in which South Park is reckoned with some of their past and the way in which, and maybe I'm reaching too much here, but I wonder if in a way like the empathy and the humanity with which they treat Mac's sort of like sexual identity in this episode in any way is kind of saying like our bad for having some episodes and seasons where we were pretty insensitive and kind of stereotypical about that stuff.
Yeah, there was an interview, God, I don't know with who it was. Maybe it was Glenn Howerton. But he's like, the really only joke that he regrets, if I'm correct, that's Glenn and not one of the other actors, are like the Max plotline with like the tranny character.
Yeah.
So, but like that's really the only thing. But like I kind of, it's not necessarily our bad, but it's like, oh, like we're moving beyond this. And I do think, these are both shows that have been on for very long. I mean, South Park even longer. And also just like when you make something for like, I've been making shit for like 3 years and I look back at not in the same way, but stuff I made 3 years ago. I'm like, oh, that's fucking shitty. Why did I ever make that? Not even like in a social context, just like, this is literally bad. So like, there's got to be a constant inner monologue, whether you're Trey Parker or you're the creators of It's Always Sunny or anything that's been around that long, where you look at your old stuff and you are like, oh, is this good? Is this bad? Like, oh, is this like what I thought? So I think it's that, although I don't necessarily know. Besides that plot line, like to me, the joke with Mac has always been not necessarily a homophobic joke, but like, here's a homophobe because you remember all of his like weird Catholic shit. Who's secretly gay, and like that's kind of the joke. It's like a American Beauty situation.
No, for sure. And I think that's where a lot of it too, because pretty early on, the other members of the gang aren't being shitty to Mac about being gay. There's like, hey man, you're gay, admit it. And yeah, he fights it with homophobic Catholic stuff, which also then makes me think a little bit, just to quickly leap over to one episode, and I think it's like the gang solves the bathroom crisis episode.
Yeah.
I like how that, and just for anyone who's watching this hasn't seen it, it's an episode where I think it's Mac initially poops in the women's bathroom of Patty's, so they have a discussion about
because he's not attracted to women, so he should be able to poop with women.
Yeah, and it's one of those episodes where I think in the first few minutes I was like, oh, is this going to be like a real like weird critique about contemporary bathroom politics, but it ends up getting to a point I think is really funny, which kind of argues for like a universal form of like theory of humanity, which is basically that all of us are ashamed shit monsters. And it like there's one point where Mac literally says like, you know what, I think we're all the same, we all got a shit. And then they decide at the end to just have one of the bathrooms labeled animal shit house is their way of like getting out of all the other stuff.
Yeah, it's like a super misanthropic, not even misanthropic, but it's like, you shit here, like fucking who gives a shit? You shit here. Nobody's proud of what they do in a bathroom. I mean, maybe some people.
Great way to handle that, because I think rather than even being at all like disrespectful about those issues on the one hand, or being preachy on the other, it's kind of like at the end of the day, whenever we talk about bathrooms or debate these politics, we're just talking about ashamed animals behind doors shitting out their food and trying to
vacating their bowels.
Yeah, it's they're getting at something pretty special there. So I think that that was a nice moment as well, along with like Mac accepting his identity, them finding this moment of just like, hey, we're all just animals in the shit house.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that about wraps it up. First of all, I want to thank all of our patrons. If any of you are listening to this either live or not live, for anyone who's not a patron, you can join Wisecrack Plus, wisecrackplus.com. We have all kinds of extra content. Also, if you just want to support the stuff that we do, these hour-long conversations, the videos we put out that take way too much time, you can check that out at Wisecrack Plus. Thank you so much for watching, for being a patron, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Michael Burns, where can people find you on the internet?
Oh, if you wanna, I'm at Michael O. Burns on Twitter. If you want to find me other places, you can put the effort in, but I'm not going to make it easy for you. But that's where I'm at on Twitter.
Yeah, and you can find me on Twitter at WisecrackAlec. I made that easy for everyone. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, everyone, for hanging out and watching this.
Thanks for all the questions.
Yeah. Have great days, weekends, lives, marriages, births, deaths. Oh, we're getting shut down.
Oh, sorry. Are you guys done?
We're done.
We're still live though. How do we stop going live?
It's good.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay,
Bye, everyone.
No, it still says live.